the day my neighbor became my lifesaver. It was a typical Saturday morning when I woke up to the sound of heavy rain pounding against my window. I had plans to get some yard work done, but with the weather so dreary, I decided to stay indoors and catch up on some reading. Little did I know that this seemingly mundane day would take a surprising turn. As I settled into my favorite armchair with a cup of coffee, I heard a loud crash outside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked through the window. To my horror, I saw that a tree had fallen in my neighbor's yard, right onto their car. My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, was an elderly woman who lived alone, and I immediately felt a sense of urgency. What if she was inside when it happened? Without thinking twice, I grabbed my raincoat and dashed out into the downpour. As I approached her house, I noticed that the front door was slightly ajar. I knocked and called out, "Mrs. Thompson, are you there?" No response. My heart raced as I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The sight that greeted me was unsettling. The living room was cluttered and the air felt heavy with silence. I called her name again, louder this time. "Mrs. Thompson!" Suddenly, I heard a faint voice coming from the back of the house. "I'm in the kitchen." I rushed towards the sound and found her sitting at the table, looking shaken but unharmed. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she exclaimed, tears in her eyes. She explained that she had just gotten up to make tea when the tree fell, narrowly missing her home. Relieved that she was okay, I offered to help her assess the damage outside. We stepped back into the rain, and Mrs. Thompson was visibly shaken by the wreckage. "I don't know how I'm going to deal with this," she said, her voice trembling. I couldn't just leave her in this situation, so I made a spontaneous decision. "Let's call a tree removal service together, and I can help you clean up afterward." We spent the next hour on the phone, trying to find someone who could come out on such short notice. Finally, we found a company that could send someone out later that day. I could see the relief on Mrs. Thompson's face, but I knew she still needed support. As we waited, I offered her some tea, and we talked about her life, her family, and how she had lived in that house for over 40 years. The rain continued to pour, but inside, we shared laughter and stories, which brightened the gloomy day. When the tree removal crew finally arrived, I helped them navigate the fallen branches, and Mrs. Thompson brought out cookies she had baked earlier in the week as a thank you. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. As the crew worked, I realized how much I enjoyed spending that time with her. We formed a bond that afternoon, one that I hadn't anticipated. After the crew finished, Mrs. Thompson looked at me with gratitude in her eyes. "You were my lifesaver today," she said. I smiled, feeling warm inside. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most unexpected situations can lead to meaningful connections. From that day on, we became good friends. I would visit her regularly to check in, and she would often invite me over for tea and cookies. That rainy Saturday not only saved her from a potential disaster, but also led to a beautiful friendship that brightened both our lives. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone needs help, don't hesitate. You might just find that you're not only helping them, but discovering something wonderful for yourself too.